What I teach is defined as combatives. If you think about the martial world as an umbrella, then basically combatives is at the extreme end of the kind of self-protection scale. So you could incorporate traditional martial arts, combat sport, self-defense that you get in your local leisure centre when some old boy's trying to teach you how to break away from someone holding your wrists. Bollocks, basically. Then reality-based self-defense, where there's some good and there's some not so good. And then combatives. So combatives are at the extreme end of the self-protection scale. And the reason for that is because they deal with worst-case scenario. So when you're looking at a level 10 threat, so a level 10 threat is basically the offering of deadly force. Definition of deadly force. Any force offered to you is likely to cause grievous bodily harm and or your death. This would be considered a level 10 threat. Any situation that you find yourself in now, there's a good chance it could go into a level 10 threat simply because of disparity. So one guy might have an argument with another guy, but this guy's got a knife and two friends. One aggressive larger male may be assaultive of a woman, etc. So when there's a disparity, there's a need to up the ante in terms of your use of force. Does that make sense? So we train for level 10. We train for the worst case scenario, up to and including deadly force if you needed to employ it, if it was you or them. Recently, UC has taken two directions. So there's two facets to it. First is general self-protection that strives to stay within legality. You know, we are a litigious society, so of course anything you do or say will be used against you in court. And quite often in UK law, criminals protected and civilians persecuted. Because it's not a case of who's guilty, who's innocent, who can be prosecuted. So it's a really dangerous area. But the bottom line is we strive to, if we have to employ force, make it both reasonable and necessary. So I would only do what was necessary to facilitate escape, to stay within the realms of law. Does that make sense? That's the primary of what UC is about. Then there's another area. And the other area is jizz. The other area is all bets are off. So all bets are off would be a reflection on how society is becoming. So it's the elephant in the room, nobody talks about it. But we're becoming the fucking Wild West, we seriously are. Just in the last New Year's Eve alone, a doorman, a bouncer at a nightclub in Park Lane was stabbed to death by a multiple armed group that tried to enter the establishment unwelcome. Same night, a woman was beat to death in her house with a hammer. Same night, some maniac with two machetes was running up and down the platform of a train station shouting for fucking God, wanting to kill all the infidels. So this shit's happening everywhere. I've got a friend who works not too far away, and there is Somalians fighting in the street with machetes, but it doesn't even make the papers. So it's becoming dangerous, it's becoming much more unstable, and it's going to get worse. You have to face that. So it's not improbable that at some point in our lifetime that you could potentially face a deadly threat. And I really seriously consider consider enhancing your home security, because armed home invasion happens a lot. So this kind of situation, if somebody breaks into my house or several men break into my house armed to cause me harm, my children harm, or my wife harm, I will end them or die doing it. So it's that level of violence I'm talking about now. All fucking bets are off, okay? If you were to train along that line, you would, if motivated, seek to get as much information about the right things that you need to know as you could. You need to look at how the threat is evolving. You can't stay static. So in 20 years, UC has evolved a lot. But where it currently is now, currently reflects the current threat. So current threat, we've got many people from a myriad of parts of the world who all have different ideas about violence. We have active killers, active threat. We have all these things that we've talked about earlier. So there's a risk. So you should prep, you should prepare. If you were going to prepare to a level that would take you to the best combatives trainee that you could possibly be, you would be looking at several areas. This would be defined as Tier 1. So to train to become a Tier 1 civilian, Tier 1 is the best of the best at anything. So if you look at military, Spec Ops, Tier 1 would be SEAL Team 6, 22 SAS, the cream of the crop. Understand? In terms of skill, knowledge, experience, blah, blah, blah. If you were to become a Tier 1 civilian, living in the UK, what skills would you need? Well, in the US, everybody has really good unarmed skills, which is primarily all we train, isn't it? They can all use a blade very well, so edge weapon combatives. They can all use an impact tool. They can use any improvised weapon well. They can all shoot well. They can drive offensively and defensively. They understand tactical emergency casualty care, how to stop major trauma bleeding, etc. They understand elements of counter custody. So should you find yourself, let's face it, even if you go on holiday to Turkey, as a white face, you're a fucking target. You're a target for kidnapping. You are. So if you were wrongfully incarcerated, how could you escape restraint? How could you begin to make your escape? These kind of gamuts and skills come into it, as does survival, prepping, bushcraft. All this gamut of skills would make you better, wouldn't it? What this workshop's going to do is look at ones that are relevant. So we're looking at some. Can't look at firearms because we can't shoot here. But we are going to look at unarmed, but up to a use of level 10. Which means I'm going to show you, if shit and fire met and you had no choice, how you could end somebody. What level you took it to is your choice. So I'm going to teach you volume 10 use of violence. Because the volume 10 is the only thing that's going to deal with the level 10 threat. You may find during that altercation that you didn't need all of that and you can turn your response down. But if you only train for 5 and you meet 10, you can't turn up what you ain't got. Does that make sense? So better to have it and not need it, than need it and not have it. So I'm going to show you unarmed skills. I'm going to show you how to use any kind of spiked or bladed weapon or tool. I'm also going to show you how to use any kind of kosh or impact stick-like tool. So I'm going to show you how to fuck people up armed and unarmed, basically. And then we're going to have a nice little module on emergency casualty care, tactical medicine, whatever you want to call it. Only area I'm concerned with is stopping massive bleeding. So we're going to look at how can you apply a tourniquet by design and improvised to another person and to yourself in an emergency. How can you wound pack? How can you stop control bleeding, basically? Then we're going to pass you over, because we're very lucky to have an expert in the room about the escapology stuff, and he's going to show us how to break duct tape and zip ties. And we're also going to look at how possibly to restrain somebody who is aggressive, violent, or unruly. So where does that belong? On a plane, guy's drunk, he's panicking, he's getting aggressive. Danger to everyone? Yes or no? You need to restrain him. The best way to restrain anybody is unconsciousness. Knocking the fuck out is restraining. But I'm going to show you in a literal sense of how to do that. Maybe a belt, makeshift item. So that's the day. It's a little bit different, a little bit more exciting, and hopefully it will encourage you to look at other areas. Yes? What we're going to start with first is a skill set. So the reason I asked you, have you all done something before? Does everybody in here know how to form and throw a palm strike? Yes, everyone knows that? What about a hammer fist? What about an elbow? What about a knee? Simple, right? Simple tools that God give us. So because we live in the UK is fucking anal in terms of legislation of self-protection, we cannot carry any weapon by design, agreed? We are not allowed to carry any weapon by design, and I think that is taking away our God-given right to self-preservation. Everybody's being encouraged to be pacified nowadays. Everyone. Look at the young average kid between 10 and 15. I don't know what the fuck you were doing when you were 10 and 15, but I was climbing trees, chasing girls, getting in fights, fucking bunking off school, nicking fags out of shops, all sorts. Do you know what I mean? Now they're like applying makeup better than a woman on a fucking little video with a selfie stick. What the fuck is going on? Seriously. And nobody talks about it. So we're becoming pacified. So much so that you can really see it in an active shooter kind of situation. You understand what an active shooter is? Active threat. So it means you're in a place, public place, somebody's coming in and want to kill as many people as they can. Well, in America, they have a strategy for this called run, hide, fight. Which is, if you can't run, fucking hide. If you can't fucking hide, fight. You know what I mean? Fight is the last stand, of course. In the UK, it's run, hide, tell. I don't know who the fuck you're going to tell. But run, hide, tell. That indicates to me that our fucking Churchill Bulldog spirit's gone. You're still a fucking alive and well at me, mate. I know I'm old school, I know I am. So what I'm going to give you is an old school view on the most up-to-date ways, if you like, to deal with this kind of situation, right? So that's what we're looking at. So we're looking at a level 10 use of force. So I'm going to give you, first of all, what we call a blitzkrieg dynamic. Everybody know what blitzkrieg is? Blitzkrieg is a definition that was employed during the war. Basically what it means is, I'm going to lay down an offensive campaign designed to totally fucking overwhelm my enemy before there is any possible chance of retaliation or recovery. That's not a fight. What that is a one-sided beating. That's what it is. Right? If you are going to give me a problem, I am ideally, if I can, I'm going to hit you first and I'm going to keep attacking you till you're out. And you're not even going to realise you was in the fucking fight. That's blitzkrieg. So I'm going to give you a proactive offensive dynamic. I'm going to build it up and then I'm going to build it down. I'm going to show you how you can lower the use of force in order just to control this person, and I'm also going to show you how you can crush his head flat. So I'm going to take it right up to the top. So environmental damage is important. You should bring it in, because the chances are, wherever you find yourself, you will be confined, restricted, or impaired in some way. Having a fight in a vehicle is very different to having a fight here. In a cubicle or a toilet or a kind of small passageway or elevation where you're down and he's up on a stairwell. Can you imagine the kind of restrictions? So it's very important that you start to learn to use your environment. But before we do that, partner's going to stay square. It's going to hold two pads nice and solid, can't be hit. What I want you to work first. So if you are dominant right, which is probably 90% of you, you will have left leg forward, right leg back. Just a small bladed position that takes away the thoroughfare for you to kick me straight in the balls, right? I've got this balanced, kind of poised position. My hands are just available. I like keeping my hands here. They may be in a position of de-escalation if you're hostile, or they may intermittently move as we communicate. Can you pick that up? Yes or no? Yeah. This is what's known as an unobtrusive platform. And what it allows me to do is it allows me to index a target before he indexes me. As long as my hands are up and I have an inclination, yes? What I want you to do, keep your dominant side back, in my case it's left, and I just want you to throw a right hand and then a left hand. So two palms basically, that's all you're going to do. So this you can do. That's it first, yes? We're going to build. Can we make that happen? Yes. Like get actually hit with some intent. Does that make sense? You're going to be now, practice the drill, you're going to go right back. And then with your inside hand, nice big hammer fist. So the beat's going to be bam, bam, boom. Got it? Here. Sorry, get here. Here. You're working from your side. So you go right, left, here we go. Catch together. Here. So we're going rear, lead, and then boom, hammer fist. So look, the hammer fist is a big gross motor action. So that, once you take it a fucking rock, just throw it. That's all you're doing. You're going to just smash this down. So we're going boom, boom, 1, 2, setting this shot up. Drop weight. Yes? What I just did was my entry. It's the first thing I did. The very first thing you do is somebody is hostile in front of you and you're trying to de-escalate. The very first physical action you make needs to be significant. So this isn't significant. It's alright if I manage to dissuade him and I posture and emotionally I can psych him out, so now he doesn't come forward. But if he's serious, pushing him will just agitate him. You agree? So why would I waste that when I can just boom here? I wouldn't. I'd hit the gun first. So bang, bang, boom is my entry. Okay,
tell you from experience that the majority of situations, as long as you're explosive, immediate, and extremely violent, are over right there. You can end it there. But we're going to train for that what if. What if he's pharmaceutically assisted, highly pain resistant, full of adrenaline and raging, so committed that all he thinks about is what he's going to do, and that he's not giving me the response he should. Because human beings are fucking resilient. I mean, when you hit them, you've got to put it in there. Does that make sense? When you're full of adrenaline and you're scared, you'll only hit half as hard as you think you can hit. That's why you should hit something repeatedly. If something is worth hitting once, it's worth hitting 6 or 7 times. Right? So the entry part is the first thing. From there, if the fucker's still stagnant or he's fell against the wall, I'm going to gain an attachment of him. I'm going to grab him so he can't get away from me. So I can pull him onto the next shot and continuously beat on him with him indexed to me until I'm ready to stop. The signal, of course, to stop would be this slumping body weight that you would feel once you're unconscious. You'll feel him drop. It's at that point that I hit the big red stop button in my brain and cease my assault. Yes, in the normal realms of self-protection, that's where I'd stop. Because I want to stay legal, and it's no more threat. But if we're on a fucking plane, and I'm only just subdued this cunt, and he's got a fucking blade and fuck knows what else, and God knows who with him, I'm not just going to subdue him, I'm going to make sure he doesn't get up. Does that make sense? So understand where it belongs. The following part, entry, is what you just did. The middle part will be what's called a beat down. This is where I'm just holding him and beating him. And then the final part will be what I do to finish. Understand? Right? So your entry just now, literally with 1, 2, big shot. What I want you to work off now is I've done that, and now I'm grabbing him and I'm just going to hammer him, That's what I'm going to do. So your partner's going to hold 2 pads like that. You're going to get an index behind. Thumb is quick, just hold the wrist in. Right? For me, I just want to go 1, 2, 3. Now, she's going to go. Right? So I've just entered here. You shouldn't need much more than that. We're going to make fucking sure. So like Dimitri used to say, train for the fucking Terminator, and everyone else will pay. So now you do this, hold the pad up, hammer, so all your work. Give your partner. Overkill's good. Hopefully you will never need overkill, but you might need it. And I said, you know, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. You can do all this shit to some fucker and you can still lose. There's no guarantees, mate, no. What I'm giving you is the highest probability for your success if you employ the correct emotional and physical attributes when you need to do it. Do you understand? So, what I've looked at is beating gravity behind it. Now, of course, this high line is either covered, turned away, or just not available clean. In which case, I'm going to grab him and I'm going to go low now. So I'm going to put in 1, then maybe 2 knees, and I'm going to slam his head face first into the pavement. If this was a level 10 situation, so 2 armed invaders break from your house, I've rolled around on the floor with one of them who's armed, we've got up and we're having it, but the other one in the corner of my eyes already knocked my wife unconscious, who's now grabbing my 8-year-old daughter and taking her down the stairs somewhere. Can you picture that in your head? Taking her off to do fuck knows what to fuck knows where. I need to make sure this fucker ain't getting up. In which case, I'm going to stomp his fucking head. Or volley his head till he was unconscious. If this was an active shooter that had just come in and stabbed 3 or 4 people, you know, and I just managed to subdue it, do you think I'm going to let him up? No. You've got to end it, you've got to. Right? So a maximum level of force would be if I stomped the back of his head. That's how you would end it. The simple way to turn it down is change target. So targeting is relevant. So now after this scene, I snatch him. I can control his descent rather than smack him in the face first. And I can now cross him in the same chord in in order to disable his movement rather than end it. Do you see how I can turn it up or turn it down? Just by shifting time. It's important that you understand where that might belong. Does that make sense? Right? So we're going to look at the maximum. So I'm going to literally from that elbow, so what you've just done an elbow, look at the context. Right, you've done this, you stopped here. You've got bam, bam, boom. Yes? I want you to grab your partner, which is his cue to get the pad down. If he doesn't get the pad down, you'll get it down next time. You're going to put in 1, 2 knees, bearing in mind, if I meet this man in the groin, his body is going to projectile forward. And I'll use that energy now to snatch him straight down. And then here, simulate stomp in the head. Only simulate. And then I'm going to move off yet, with my hands up, active guard, scanning the environment. What am I looking for? Secondary threat. Any situation that you find yourself in, before you emotionally fixate on the person in front. No. Most situations that you find yourself in, 98%, he will have a weapon, so watch the hands, and he will have a friend, so look for him. Do you understand? You're not staying there fixated. This is you on the X. Get off the X. Right? So you're going to go from this position, where you just index that elbow, and when I count 1, you're going to go here. It's the side position reach. He's going to give you a low target for the groin. You're going to put in 1, 2 knees to hit the knuckle of your knee. On the second one, if he pikes too far, he moves back, then change your kid. Now, take this club and put it on the floor. Me and me, stand, move off mine. Understand the drill? It's fucking done. There's a good chance it's finished. If not, and I get where he was, it's now this. There's a good chance it's done right there. If not, I'm still ending up here. Now I've got that thing. See where part of this can work? I'm giving you the extreme in case you need the extreme. Because there's people out there that you could give the extreme and they'll hand it back to you. If it's your time, it's your time. The only solace that you can take from that is that fucker will never forget me. I will be the best second best he's ever seen. He will talk to his fucking children about me. Do you know what I mean? His fucking bloodline will remember me. So will his dead ancestors. You've got to have that kind of attitude. Right? So train for that level. So if I'm in any situation that I can't avoid, I can't escape it. I can't de-escalate because there's no talking to this person, and I feel I'm about to become a cornered animal. I'll hit a switch in my brain that will access that. And I will give you 10. In my head, from the very first thing I do, I'm going to do all that. The only thing that will change that outcome is how quickly you hit the ground. Do you understand? So always approach every situation at 10. Don't think, oh, it's about 5 or just to see once and see what he does. Don't do that. If you hit somebody and they stand on the back and they get here, spit out some blood, they're going to do 1 or 2 things, depending on personality profile. They're going to look at you and go, fair one, mate, and walk off. Or they're going to go, now I'm going to kill you. You know what I mean? They'll access that emotional state. If they're carrying the babies now, they're going to get it out. So don't pause, because you don't know. If there's a little stutter pattern interrupt after I've hit you and you're not down yet, I'm going to grab you and hit you repeatedly until you are. That's the bottom line, yes? So if I was in that situation here and I go here, oh, and I'm fucking near and here and I go here, this is where it was going to. I'm going to stop. If it was more close quarters, and after this elbow here, I'm putting this in this here, boom, I'll use this wall. And then, boom, just do it together. See where the environment can come in? Right, so with your pads, I'm going to put this together. I'm going to give you 3 counts. We're working continuous. Right? Every time he's going to give you a transition, so he's going to go boom, 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 and then stay like that. So literally you're going to go from here, boom. Here, keep the pads tight. Here, and I'm going to put one while you're also down on the left knee. Boom, boom, grab, touch, breathe. That's it together, yes? First count. your perspective now. It's going to be right. Attach. 1 knee, 2, accelerate, stay. Understand? That's what I want. We'll do it 3 counts first, yes? Go! How long did that take? 5 seconds? That's what a real fight takes. 5 visual implants. Go! That's what you want, right? Ready? Because in the US, if I teach anyone, even civilians for self-protection, they are legally allowed to carry weapons for self-defense. It's a minimum. You can carry fucking pepper spray that they bought in Walmart. And I believe every woman on the planet should have fucking pepper spray. Maybe Mara hit me. They carry a flashlight, maybe a taser, maybe a baton, or a concealed firearm carry permit if they have a license. Yes? And the reason that they would use unarmed skills, what we're doing now, is because they were caught by surprise and couldn't get to the weapon. Which is really bad. Don't get caught by surprise. Or if the weapon failed, or if they dropped the weapon, they would use unarmed skills to get back to it. Does that make sense? So in short, like Fairbairn said in 42, unarmed skills are only for those foolish enough to be caught without a weapon. So never be caught without a weapon. So when we come to the weapon part of this programme, you'll see the UK legalities. Potentially what you could carry and employ. So when I'm talking about a weapon here, I am talking about an improvised tool. Maybe a fucking sharp pencil, maybe a chisel, or maybe a fucking tactical pen. Something you could stab some fucker with, or something you can hit somebody with, but something legal to have. Padlock or beanie hat, something like that, right? I want you down, when you've done this drill, to access the tool. Make as if you're accessing a knife. Put it in your dominant hand. Because you'll need that thought process for what's to come, yeah? Right, ready? Last one. Gross motor tools are easily installed. Complex motor skills, such as cross, hook, cross, uppercut, or any combination of punches where you're using 2 hands in opposite directions, moving in unison. Complex skill requires much more repetition to be owned and deteriorates reliably under stress. Fine motor skill, which requires hand-eye coordination, so anything like clapping that you see in the fancy shit, although it's sexy as fuck, and it is, it falls apart like a paper condom if you really need it. So fine motor skill is less likely to work under fight stress. So you understand fight stress will be present. You will feel fear, adrenaline. That will show your breathing, make your legs shake, make your vision tunnel, your heart will be beating in your head, you will be physically impaired, right? You will also feel potentially pain, fatigue, you'll be massively tired, you'll be disorientated and you'll be confused. And the reason for that is blood leaves the frontal part of your brain to go to your middle brain, limbic area. So you go from cognitive, where you can think, to limbic, where you have the intelligence of a dog. All you know is fight, flight, freeze. That's it. Okay? So what you put on your disc in training should replicate stress like that, to a degree. We're going to try and touch on it today. And anything put on the disc under stress is never ever forgotten. Your body will always remember. Your subconscious will always remember. But the actions need to be gross motor. Targeting in combatives is generic. So it basically means the high line, 360 degrees around the dome of the head, 360 degrees around the neck. Anything I hit there hard enough, I should get a result. The low line, groin, pelvis, collection of dangly objects in the trousers that come in various shapes and sizes and lengths. Inside femoral, outside peroneal, knees, shoulders, feet. So low line and high line is primary. Tend to stay away from the body. That's more for security, low profile, for policing. And if people have thick clothing, heavy musculature, it's hard for a small woman to do some damage. Whereas the eyes, throat, groin, which are primary, are pretty reliable. You hit the dome hard enough, you'll shake the brain. Understand? So the target in combatives, particularly for what we're looking at, is any bony plate on the head, any soft tissue around the neck. I'm looking to disrupt consciousness, breathing, vision, mobility and take control. I want to shut you down anatomically. Does that make sense? The more I take from you in a physical sense, the more I take from you in a psychological sense. You'll wish you never fucking met me. So this kind of blitzkrieg dynamic, particularly if you go first, is reliable. But you've got to have the right mentality. Does that make sense? So, we're going to move on from that. We're going to have about a 10-minute break. Get some water, get hydrated, drink some fruit, get your blood sugar up, and then we're going to go into the next bit. Everyone cool? Yeah. No injuries?
No.
Use of any kind of spike or blade. So anything with a point or an edge. Although we've not been considered a knife-bearing culture such as the Philippines or Malaysia or places like that, we are a knife-bearing culture. Knife crime amongst youths now for the last 30 years has been ridiculously rife, and now it's been maximised by various sort of things. So here when you use the term active threat and active terrorism, let's say, it's usually with an edged weapon, or usually two. So an example with Lee Rigby, when two guys run him over in the car and then they got out, each one of them had a ceramic blade, and one had a ceramic blade and a meat cleaver, the other had a machete. The ones in the last attack that happened down in Borough Market, they had ceramic knives strapped to their hands, tied to their hands. Now these people are trained, motivated, fit. They've done their research. They know that if they've got a big edged weapon and they're full of adrenaline and they're swinging and swaying, that they could drop it. And the reason that you could drop it is one of the effects of adrenaline, when it hits your body, blood is withdrawn from your extremities. And the frontal neocortex part of your brain, conscious brain, is withdrawn. And it's fed to the heart and lungs where it's considered needed more. What that leaves you with is this kind of lazy, heavy kind of limb structure. That's why your legs shake. And hand-eye coordination and dexterity is gone now. You're clumsy. That's why fine motor skill doesn't work. So it's very easy to drop something. So they've learned about that. They're tying it to their hands. So a lot of us in this business wear these kind of bands, and it's not just a support thing, it's actually a retention idea. The idea of this band is I take this and I put it over 2 fingers, then I ain't dropping this in the fight, and I can still use my hands. So if I had to take down an active threat subject, I could still purge the body, search for weapons, communications, anything else, without putting this down. So weapon retention, this is a modern combative way of doing it. But these people know this. Do you understand? So what I want to look at is, how can we use any kind of point or edge tool? So in Germany, some knives are legal. You can have a small fixed blade. You can have pepper spray for dogs. So every woman that I train in Germany, we've got 6 instructors in Germany. Germany is a big movement, quite a lot of women training now. And the reason for that is because there's a huge increase in attacks on women from guys of immigrant appearance, where the MO is 3 or 4 of them taking 1 or 2 girls and raping them with gang rape at knife point. Now, I don't know any unarmed skill set that's going to allow a small female to deal with that threat. But if I gave her something sharp, like a hair spike, like a strong, sturdy, structural metal pen, let's say, like I said, a hair spike or a bradle, a small chisel or a wood engraving tool, or just a solid metal pen. We've got to work around legality if we're in the UK. In Germany, you can have a knife as long as a small blade. First thing I teach women there, before any unarmed skills, is I teach them how to use that. So the highest probability that a small woman could have against a large, aggressive, armed male would be if she stuck something fucking sharp in an eyeball. Stab him in the fucking eye. The targeting for use of knife, because understand a knife has no ballistic value. You can't knock people out with knives. You kill them by stabbing and opening up, making holes and bleeding out. So most use of knife is lethal, and it's a very repugnant subject. You know, guns have always been associated to cops and good guys, and knives have always been associated to bad guys. But the bottom line is everybody uses knives. So why should we learn how to use a knife as a tier 1 civilian? Well, for one reason, so that you have an understanding of its capability and how it can be used against you. That would be a good reason. Another reason would be because I want maximum efficiency. I want to be able to use my natural bodily tools and any weapon. You know, why not? If you can do it, I want to learn how to do it properly. So, academic research, development and study. The fact if you train knife very well and precise, you also improve attributes. So you tighten up body mechanics, body movement, transference of weight, flow, timing. Things get better if you train weapons. So there's another reason. Am I telling you to carry a weapon in the street? Absolutely not. I'm not telling you to break any laws whatsoever. But I am telling you that in your house you're allowed to have pretty much anything apart from a chemical irritant, a knuckle duster or a baton. But you can have any sword or any axe or any knife that you want. So I suggest you do. My house is a fucking armory. If you broke in my house, you would not leave the way you came in. Simple as that. I have a nightstand EDC. Do you know what EDC is? Everyday carry. I am a bit geeky about everyday carry, but everyday carry is kit, tools. By my bed, I've got a pair of Solomon shoes I can put straight on. I've got a flashlight, I've got a knife, and I've got an axe. Yes, plural weapons. Yeah. And the reason for that is, I'm fucking prepping, mate. Do you know what I mean? People say, oh, he's fucking paranoid. Well, let me tell you this, right? Let's say that you had a home invasion, armed. Boom, you hear the door come in, you're half asleep, trying to get your facts, and now they're upstairs. What are you going to do? What the fuck are you going to do? You ain't going to fight and run in bare feet. You need your fucking shoes on. Where'd you keep your shoes? Keep my shoes right by my bed. I'll put them on in a nanosecond. So the first bang wakes me up. The second bang sees me dressed and prepped and waiting. Now, if anything comes through that fucking door, I'm ready. Now I've got a shot. Key is preparation. Do you understand? So, learn how to use tools, because if you break into my house, guess what? I'm using a tool. I'm not carrying a tool in the street per se, unless it's somewhere I can carry legally. So in the US I carry, Czech Republic I carry everything. Any countries like Slovakia or Eastern Europe, I can check the laws. I carry it. Why? Because you're a fucking tool-bearing animal and you're more efficient armed. That's why criminals are. Gives you a higher probability of success. Do you understand? So there's no fucking rules, so learn the rules. So I'm going to teach you how to employ a blade or a spike type object. And I'm going to start with what you already know before. I'm going to show you how to attack the face and the eyes. In blade work, there's two types of target. There's what you call a switch, which gives you an instant effect. And then there's a timer, which if you hit the timer, the guy will bleed out. In about 5 to 10 minutes under stress, he'll probably die, but in that 5 minutes, he's still active, which means he can still kill you. That's why I don't prefer point and X weapons. I prefer impact weapons that knock you the fuck out. But on the body, there are several switches. The eyes, which means if I stab you in the eye, you'll drop like a fucking stone, no matter who you are. That's reliable evidence. Anyone been hit in the eye is immediately stopped. So some guy runs a fucking girl around the corner, puts her up against the wall she's managed to access, and he's about to rape her. And she just manages through deception to get her hands close and spike him in the eye. She will create pain, she will create separation, and she will create the opportunity to run. So why wouldn't I give you that first? Because it will give you the highest probability of success. So the eye is a switch, and it's the only switch that's non-lethal. Does that make sense? So it won't kill you. All the other switches are. So another switch is the aorta. Hit that, it's done. The brainstem. Hit that, finished. So I'm going to show you how to use a knife less lethally as well as lethally. Does that make sense? You do with the information is up to you. If you ever find yourself in a jam and the only thing stopping you from meeting your maker and prevailing to see another day is picking up that tool and using it like I'm showing you, then you've got something worthwhile, have you not? Yes or not? Right. So the targets are timers and switches. Blade work targets the arterial system, so you cut an artery so you bleed out quick. It targets the circularity system so that you deflate lungs and you can't breathe. And it targets organs. Right? We are going to look at, first of all, less than lethal. How you can attack the eye. So imagine attacking the eye, kicking him in the bollocks, legging it. That kind of thing, right? Just recently in the Philippines, a woman in a taxi, she dealt with a rapist with a pen. And she stabbed him straight in the fucking eye. There's a picture of him in the hospital with a big old patch, feeling sorry for himself. But guess what? She didn't get fucking raped. It's good, right? Yeah. So So I'm going to teach you that. What I need is, so I'll give you a couple of examples, right? There's a metal pen, there's a braidle, which is a tool. This is a set of tools that are for wood whittling. What's the matter with wood whittling? Nothing wrong with whittling wood. Great. Right, famous five, did it? If you carry something like this in your pocket and you get caught with it, there's a chance you're going to have to explain why you got it. But if you carry it in your everyday kit, along with a piece of wood that clearly shows you've been wood whittling, you've got a fucking reason to have it, haven't you? I've been through loads of airports with that in my carry-on, and it's fine. Sturdy metal pen, you can't go wrong. This one is all the way down, it's a metal cylinder with a solid structure in the middle, very nondescript. This will go through your head. Right. Braidle is a tool for making holes. The only reason I'm showing you this is I want something of legality that will replicate that. Because that's the fucking ultimate. You give me two of them, mate, stuck on like that. I'll keep the whole fucking pub at bay until the police get there. So, I'm going to teach you how to use a spike tool. The reason I prefer a spike over a blade is because I prefer what you call point-driven methods. I don't want to slash you and make a mess, I want to stab you and end you, that's it, right? So I'm going to show you methods in which you could employ that. So we want to write that. When you work this module, you will work on you will work with a small stick-like structure. Harmless, not going to hurt anyone. Or you will use a soft training knife when you work with your partner, which you will. Cool? Right, the first thing I'm going to teach you, a lot of my influence for the knife comes from Libre. So I recommend that you look at Libre. So the difference that we employ Libre with is we employ it with shitloads of intent and bad attitude. So somebody said that UC is like a wrecking ball. That's what it's like. It's just like a wrecking ball that smashes shit down, and that's a good analogy. If you combine it with Libre, it's a wrecking ball with spikes. You don't get much better than that, but seriously, right? So I'm going to show you an element from Libre called eye and facial attacks. There's about 5 or 6. I'm only going to give you 2. I'm going to show you how to spike somebody in the eye, and I'm going to show you something called a descending etch, where you stab somebody in the eye and you rip it down their face. So you're fucking disfiguring them for life, and you are blind. But, you know, look at the context of where that belongs. I'm going to do that because you spilled my drink. I'm not going to do that because you looked at my girlfriend, you know. I'm going to make sure that she can do that if you fucking corner her in the lift and you're going to hurt her. And then when she's fucking done that, I'm going to finish it. It's that attitude, do you understand where it belongs? So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to take this facial mix. I need, what instructors are here to take one of this, and I need you to make 5 lines. And then I need everybody else to take one of these stick-like tools, pass it to each other if there's not enough. And we're going to go down these lines doing this drill. Does that make sense? Right, let's get that one. So I have to use the old eye jab. And they use a very gathered fingered formation that makes a very small circle. And they're aiming at one eye, which again is a very small circle. So under stress, it'd be very hard to, very easy to miss, particularly if the head's moving and it's animated. So this kind of one eye thing, although I seem to be quite good at it, is not reliable for the masses. So instead of targeting one eye, you're going to target the upside down triangle, so going from both his eyebrows down to the point of his nose. So imagine a sniper's triangle upside down. So I'm looking at one or both eyes, or any of the soft tissue that surround the eyes that will create this flinch response to kick in as soon as I stab it. Does that make sense? If you were going to use a hand, I would just recommend that you just throw your fingers out and splay them. This kind of motion, boom, just this, boom. You'll get one finger in the eye. Hitting the eye is a very reliable target for immediate response because it doesn't matter how big somebody is, the musculature around the eye isn't enough to protect you. So the muscle around the eye is a sphincter muscle, circular, like your asshole. And any stimulus towards it makes you crunch that fucker up, right? So the flinch response is so hardwired and fast that no matter how fast I throw that shot at him, he will flinch his eyes shut before I get there. It's just hardwired. So it's difficult to get right clean in the eye.
And even gouging, when people talk about gouging the eye out, bollocks, you can't do it. You'd have to put the head in a vice, and you would have to push right down and then lever out. So it doesn't happen. But what does happen is, when his eye shots deep and I push it in, you can create what's called an optical knockout, where the eye sets back in the head further than it's supposed to go, the central nervous system recognises something's wrong and shuts you down. So it's an altered state of consciousness, a bit like a knockout, but he's not out, but no one's in. Does that make sense?
How'd you do it?
If the eyeball is pressed, so if I was to gouge him, and if I can get across and damage the tissue of the eye, that's the objective. But if not, I'm just going to push the eyeball in, so that it goes back beyond where the retina holds it, and the central nervous system will just shut down, which is sensory overload. Understand? What I'm looking at is a fast entry in and out with a small structured stick. So if you look at that wood chisel, the wood chisel has got about this much blade, and that's why I like it. Whereas that spike is dangerous all the way down. So if I spiked him with the spike, and I got a little bit overzealous, there's a good chance I'll put it through the back of his head. But if I spike him with this, which abruptly comes to an abrupt stop when the blade ends, I'm only hitting him with about 3 centimetres of steel, which means I'm going to hit his eye and nothing else, which means he won't die. Does that make sense? So what I'm looking at doing is holding this in my hand, ideally concealed. Right, concealed. From here, I'm just going to stab that in a hammer grip, keeping my thumb here so that I don't get this thing happening. And I'm just going to stab it in and out, pam, just here, boom, in and out, in and out. Don't need much power. Eye jab or an eye attack is the only thing that you could get an effect from whilst moving backwards. So what powers a good solid jab, good solid straight left, dropping weight and turning the hips, right? So if he was coming towards me and I jabbed him on a retreat, would I get much of an effect? Why not? Because the energy's going away, right? An eye jab's different. If I drop this eye jab into his face, I'll get that response, and if he's coming forward and I do that boom on my way back, I'll still get an effect. So attacking the eyes for a woman should be primary. As repugnant as that may sound, do you want to get hung in one piece or not? You understand? So someone says, oh, I couldn't do that, I couldn't stab somebody in the eye. Imagine getting gang raped and infected with HIV. You know, you lived, you survived, but you don't want a man near you again, your relationship's finished, your marriage is over. Your husband's constantly thinking, why did you put yourself in that situation? Everything's a downward spiral from here, emotionally and physically. But you could have stopped it if you went, boom. What would you do now? You'd stick it in both his fucking eyes, wouldn't you? Yes, you would. Right, so get your head on. So what we're going to do is approach one of these lines, and you're just going to stab straight in and out. If I said to you, stick that in that, work it out. Right? The next one you're going to do is what's called a descending edge. And I'm going to stick that in, and just drop weight and rip it down. So I'm looking at aiming here, and then tearing down his face. Brutal. Yeah, it's fucking brutal. But you know, you want to deal with brutal, you've got to be brutal. So I'm giving you a solution. So stab it in the eye, because the eye spike, you do about 5. Then you're going to stab and rip. So you're just going to it's a little circle, in and down. Boom, boom. Like these 2 ends. Right? That's what you're going to do. Get your stick, get the lines, let's work. I could give him time not to recover from his injury, but certainly to be bodily able to do something to you. Do you agree with that? In which case, there could be a situation where you need to fucking finish this quickly. So again, in an active kind of threat situation. So you're in a public place with your family, you've got no expectation of what is about to happen. In fact, you've never even thought about it. All of a sudden, you just hear screaming. So it's up, Berlin, Aldi's, supermarket. Guy walks in there, lone wolf terrorist, with a machete. Very first thing he does, some old woman frees her feet up, getting some food. He grabs her, pulls her head back, and starts to machete her head off till he's got it here like this. He cuts her head off. Imagine if your first intel that something was going to happen was that. We'd all fucking shit it, wouldn't we? We'd all be like, oh my God. What I'm telling you is, that shit's happening. So if you have an expectation that life is becoming like that, then the second you see a big truck hit the sidewalk and start mowing people down, you're not going to stand there thinking, I wonder why he's doing that, as he lost control. You're going to know what's going on. Does that make sense? So the first thing is get informed. Get informed to get mentally prepared. You need to put a blueprint in your brain.
that shows you how to run. In a situation like that, run, fucking run. Find an exit. But how do you run? You want to know how to run. Well, if the guy's this way facing you and has a cone of vision of 10 to 2, you really want to stay either side of it, out of his scope. Would you agree? So stay low, outside of 10 to 2, move to the nearest exit. When you're in a public place, particularly a place that is, you know, of a tourist attraction. So any tourist attraction is a potential threat. Even taking your kids to Disneyland Paris is a potential threat. It's a target. It makes sense to be more vigilant. So if I was going to London Eye, to our London's capital, I wouldn't because it's a shithole, but if I was, and taking my family there, I guarantee you that particular day I would be pretty switched on. So we all know about using awareness, don't we? See the top chart there, Cooper's colour codes. Cooper's colour codes are defined to depict varying levels of awareness. So condition white would be what most people are, sheep. So when you see people texting on their phone with their iPod in, walking down the road, they're in condition white. They've got no attention of the environment. They are easy pickings for a predator. When you're out and about, you should be in what's called yellow, condition yellow. Just where you're alert, aware, comfortable, you can see what's going on. If you spotted a potential problem, now you would go to condition orange, where you're in a state of alarm. And if you had to act, fight or run, that would move to condition red. But there's another shade of yellow, and it's called condition yellow alpha. And it means that if you're in a problematic place, shitty neighbourhood, cars broke down in a bad area, rather than just be condition yellow switched on, you want to be actively scanning for a threat, because you know you're in a bad place. Does that make sense? You would do that naturally, instinctively. If you have a high level of awareness to such things, then if you spotted the early pre-threat cues of something like that horrible active threat situation happening, you've got a good chance of running to freedom. If not, they recommend that you hide. Hide somewhere, barricade the door, sit it out till the authorities get there. That's probably your best chance. But if it gets to the point where that door is breached and that maniac is coming through, you've got two choices. You either lay down like a sheep and let him do whatever it is he wants to do, or you stop him from fucking doing it. If you were to stop him from fucking doing it, your best chance would be armed. So imagine you're in a public establishment, big restaurant and everything else. Where are you likely to find big fuck-off shiny knives? Kitchen. Find your way to the fucking kitchen en route to the exit. Arm yourself. If you can't get out the exit because it's locked, then you hide and keep a tool with you. Now if this fucker comes through the door, is it alright if you stab him in the eye in order to live another day and get home to your children? What do you think? I'd say yes, reasonable and necessary use of force, wouldn't you, under them circumstances? So that's where it belongs. I am not telling you to stab people up. I'm just showing you how to do it. Right, so everything you do is going to follow the eye. The idea is, if I can't get that, and fuck the cows, I'm gonna. But if not, I've got to do something. So I'm looking at hitting the eye, which is a switch, instantaneous effect, cover his eye. And then from there I'm going to grab him and I'm going to stab him further. I'm going to stab him to the lung and one in the neck. So I'm hitting his circulatory system and his arterial system. His arterial system here, I'm going to plug that fucking carotid so it's bleeding out. I've already stabbed him in the eye and now I've deflated his lungs. Right? So what I'm looking to do is go eye spike, attach, lung, neck. That's all I'm doing. So spiking the eye, grabbing it. With a reverse grip, stabbing him twice in the lung, once in the neck. So right here. That's all I'm doing, right? Eye grab, lung, neck. Again, your perspective. Hit him in the eye, grab, lung, get the lungs from here or the front. And then understand? Eye, two in the lung, one in the neck. That's all you're doing. Figure it out. Yes? Give it a partner. So, let's say he's an active threat. He's booted the door in, he's come through the door, the guy's in a low position and he's looking for anyone to shoot. You can do it with this. It could be an edge weapon. If you were hit outside of 10 to 2, so it's 10 to 2, so his peripheral vision cone will be about 10 to 2. approximately. The relaxed state, it might be wider, but he'll be stressed, it'll be wider. It might even be less. And of course, he can turn his head so he can see you. But the idea is, stay outside the tent to stay low and move quickly with purpose, which is the idea. Right? The objective of what I'm going to do is coming through in this low position ready for this done, is I am looking to ambush from behind here and just stab his hand. I'm literally looking to just hook this, stab, so he drops hands down in the knee. That's all I'm looking at doing. So you imagine, even with this aluminium trainer, right, that's hard, cold and unforgiving. That as soon as this is the first thing I'm doing, it's just that, just fucking latching in, hooking this anywhere. Then I'm just going to stab. There's no point on that story. It's a record, it's unforgiving, right? Imagine that was a nice fucking big carving knife from the kitchen. We're hacking him up, seriously. Right? So just because I'm using this structure here, into here, that's what I'm doing. From low to here. That's what I'm doing. Cutting, gun holding weapon, very leg. Yeah, that's what I'm not going like that. I'm coming up with it. I'm behind. Right? Coming from behind. Literally here. Sorry. Yeah. That was a shot with it, sorry. That's a good shot. Drone forward. Right, with the gun. Right. You're just going to approach from here. Blade to hand. First count. You're going to get close to him and just hook. Just hook into him. As you hook, just grab any clothing. His head, his arm, his shoulder. From here, I just want you to rip, stab. If you're still holding this gun, after 5 stabs, you need a slap. As soon as you've got him to drop the gun, go to the neck. Drill finishes when the man is down. As you hook, just grab in, clothing, his head, rip, stab. Train it in a low position, as if you're coming through the door and it's ready. Right? Person doing the drill with the knife, get to approximately 2 o'clock and stay low. Your entry with the blade will be literally just hook this on. Just throw yourself on him and hook. Stand. That's what you do. Got it? I'm hooking and I'm just going to belay his arm. So I'm looking to rip this down. The arm that's holding the gun, hook this, shear all the way down. Straight and shear. Yeah, shear up that nice banana peel skin all the way down to the stomach. Here you go. Taking this down and I'm putting this inside there. Straight into the plate. Couple it up and drop my weight and take him down and end him. Straight through the plate here. So you skew him down, bring him out. On the ground, check him. Check the secondary weapons, which there will be. Check for communications, be aware of the vest. I said, so what? I'm training them where? Before they go on the track? No, as they go on the track, you'll go with them. And you have an armed team? Oh no, they're pacifists. Why do they want to learn anything? Well, they need to learn something, so they figured unarmed would be useful. So let me get this straight. You want me to go with this bunch of fucking lip-breasted Unitarians? Train them, and there's no one else looking out for us but me. Well, that's about the size of it. You want to be basically to train them and protect them. Give me a gun, a lot of money, maybe. Do you know what I mean? That kind of situation. The reason for that is because the white face is the target. likely to happen. If your work takes you or frequents you to a third world country, if you are a high-profile journalist ended up in Palestine, if you are just in the wrong place at the wrong fucking time, any number of things could be happening. But you could be kidnapped. You know, abduction of women is very, very fucking common, and we know what for, don't we? So if you knew how to break a restraint, escape a restraint, it's useful information, surely. There's many of it out there. It's going to give you a taste of that. Understand? So sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where you are fucking outnumbered and out-firepowered. You ain't going to win. If you try, you're going to die. In which case, tactical surrender might be the best idea here. Until you can get to a better position than you're in right now. Do you see where it belongs? Yes or no? Right, so we're going to take a little tea break, 15 minutes. And then when we come back, we're going to work with, we're very lucky to have, we're going to work with our expert who's going to show us how to break duct tape, and he's going to show us how to kick zip ties. Cool? Various other things, we're going to host him for seminars soon. So, watch this space. But for now, pass you over. Conrad.
Hi guys. So, yeah, I've served a bit of time in the military, and after that, I kind of fell into a few different specialist fields, and this is one of them. Please bear in mind, what I'm going to show you is nothing fancy. It's all open source stuff that you can find on YouTube if you want to practice or get more knowledge. It's just a basic introduction. I'll show you destructive methods of both the cable ties and the tape, and also I'll show you just different ways of thinking. So as Lee refers to branching, it's essentially branching for this, of ways to use it non-destructively, so that should the situation change and you think, oh shit, I can't actually get out there coming back, you can just make it look or put them back on. So what we're going to start with is tape. I'm sure you've all seen the videos of how to get people to tape. So essentially you're wrapping up. A lot of it's about presentation for yourself in your mind. It's all about presentation. When they say, give me your fucking hands, it's all about how you present them. If you present them like this, it's going to be more and more difficult. There's different ways. You can scrunch up your wrists, because if you look, normal wrist, you can touch fingers, you scrunch it up, you get that much gap. That's for slipping. The thumb is key for slipping. All you've got to do is get out that, and you're good. So there's presenting like this, and then you release hands like this, where you make a triangle, it allows you to slip. This also gives you your base for your break. I'm not going to go into behind the back stuff, because as time goes on, as Lee's saying, we've been captured already. This is not the snatch phase. You've been sitting in a room somewhere waiting for them to come. So the likelihood of it being behind here, there's always a chance, but you need to work, they need you to eat your food, they need you to do what you need to do, so it'll be at the front. So, you want to come and wrap me up?
Yeah, wrap me up.
So, two ways to present. If you make a triangle, so it's all about your triangle that you talk.
Yeah.
If you make a triangle, that leaves you space here to adjust your handles if you need to.
So what do you go off?
That doesn't matter. They're not going to give you the option of it.
And the ears, which the ears.
Yeah, for those with hairy arms, it's going to be fun. So what we'll do, when you guys do it yourselves, just do 2 or 3 around, and we'll go from there.
So when we tried this in class last week, we just used cheap duct tape, and it was too easy, so we thought, that's because it's cheap. So I went and bought Gorilla tape, and T1CTD tape, which is apparently the best tape, but it's still relatively simple.
So then what you're going to do is the same motion, plastic cuffs, zip ties. You can either go from here, you get the swing. Your aim is to get this motion. The tighter the cable ties are, the easier it is to snap them. Same with this. What you don't want to do with this is get it so it punches out. Because then you have to employ other methods. You won't be able to do your slide.
So in effect, you're using this as a wedge.
Yeah. So you can either do it this way, whichever way you prefer, or you can do that.
Okay, shall I do it?
Yeah, go. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then what else we have is we have something called a hand. Just, if you can wrap me.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll just do the hand wash. This is a method we've tested. Yeah. Just a non-destructive, so you could potentially get out. Bear in mind, it doesn't always work. You will not always be able to go out. Even as instructors, sometimes you just have to call for help. But then essentially what you're thinking with this, we call it a hand wash. So imagine how you wash your hands. You're going to rip the skin, obviously. It could be tighter, it could be looser, it doesn't matter. The more pressure you're under, the more you sweat, the more it helps you. So all you're doing, as with hairs as well, is easier because it gives you a platform to loose. So all you're doing is going to like wash your hands. Again, not getting this tight and thin because then you'll have a nightmare. So just going to wash your hands.
Tuck in your thumb.
Yep. The thumb is key for all of it. So once you've got your thumb, it's like if you can fit your head in something, you can fit your body in something. Same, once you've got your thumb out, you can get everything out. And it's just a wash. And then this can stay here while you assess the rest of the situation. And should you require to put it on, you just shove it back in and pull it tight and give the impression that you're still bound. Yeah.
So you're really breaking the adhesive.
Yeah, that's all you're doing.
Yeah.
And the more pressure you're under, the more you sweat, the easier it becomes. There are lots of anti-slip methods and anti-breakout methods and whatever that you can employ. You can put them from here to here, you can do it behind the back, you can whatever. But like I said, it's just going to be a basic example. So what we'll do is we'll take you guys through it. We'll do the destructive because the other one is just washing. So if we can just get groups of 3.
Everyone's hyped up.
Yeah. And then just run through it. Do the 3 wraps and then a split.
Tuck your thumb in. That's it. Now work on pulling it out. That's coming. There you go.
Oh, look at that. Round and round. Try not to get any twists or turns and round. Right like that. That's about what you want. Yeah? Pick someone else up. Okay? You have a go at a set when you do it together. All he's going to do from here, push your hands out as if you're presenting upward to the eye line. You are going to drive both your elbows across this wedge of your chest, which you will push out. Gives you the best chance to leverage tearing. When it tears, it should shear. So it's like you bit with your tooth and you tear it. That's why it goes so easy. All right? Obviously, this is probably known, and there's probably lots of tape out there that you may not be able to fit. But generally, duct tape is the most commonly thing used, along with zip ties, and this is one way in which you can break it. It's called the destructive method. Yes? Right, hands right out, far and back. Yeah, a lot easier than you thought, right? Yeah.
It applies to plastic cuffs. Exactly the same. But with these, the tighter the better. You're going to get this plethora of different sizes, methods. We've got a couple here. We'll use these for the destructive method. You have this type, which is the police military type. You're not really going to break them by using the methods. There's ways to pick them and shim them and cut them. So we're just going to show you different types. We're not actually going to do that. That's the police military ones. Then you get your standard thicker ones. Again, you might be able to break them. Don't get me wrong. But this is where the non-destructive stuff comes in, and I'll show you that.
You need broke your hands, didn't you? We tried it. You need broke the fucking hands. It's too hard. So I would say friction or pick it, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not going to talk too much about the destructive method because it's exactly the same. Same movement. And if it's at the back, it's exactly the same. You're just creating that wedge to snap it off.
Could you just show how you would shim that?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
use this.
yep, so this is also being aware of your environment. So if you have nothing, I have something on me, but
So
you're
there's
looking
methods
around.
with no tools,
Yeah.
which you just looked at, and there's methods with tools. So part of the EDC that we talked about, the everyday carry, if you're in this kind of field, you would carry something that you could pick something with. Yes?
Yeah, and depending on the level of experience of people, if they're after a quick job, they'll just zip you up and leave this end on. This end is key. It doesn't work with all of them, But what you're trying to do essentially is this is on a ratchet system. If they leave it on, you can turn it back on itself. You're not trying to get it all the way out, you're just trying to shim it so that you can make space. And again, it's all about dexterity and when it's on. So all you're doing is shimming it. It's the same principle. If you can get anything in there to lift that locking ratchet, that's going to be key. So you can do it with a bobby pin. Always carry one of them. They're useful for everything. Not my hair, but useful for everything. And it's exactly the same. These are quite strong, so you can use them. You can shim from the front, shim from the back. It really depends on how you can get into it. Because bear in mind, you're like this, or like this, or like this. It's behind your back. It's difficult. You're going to find what works best for you. You'll probably have time to figure that out.
Because if you're captive, that's what you got, isn't it? Yeah. That's the time.
So we teach
Can you just shim that one there for me?
This one here?
Yeah.
So this one you can actually do with fingernails. If you have fingernails, you can actually shim this with a fingernail. You can lift it. Or if you have friends, you're captive with a friend, you can work together.
So for last night, I managed to get that off me, shimmed while it was on.
Yeah, so you can
going underneath.
You can put it on, and if you, again, you're doing the present, so you have space. You can try to snap it, it'll hurt you. But then all you're doing is you're trying to get this in the best possible position. Again, it's bending. Yeah.
I did it with that.
So again, you can't always escape every time. And then then if you have this, if you do have a hair clip, what you're trying to do is take those plastic things off the end. You know, they've got the little melted thing, and that gives you access to do everything. You can wash with these as well. You can move it around. And all you're trying to do is get it so you can lift that. And yeah, so that's exactly what it is. That's what I mean. You can't always get out.
So on that one,
Yeah.
rather than just put it and try and get it all out, you can just do it in stages. And
Yeah, absolutely.
at
Yeah.
the same time.
What you're just trying to do is get until you can get that thumb out,
Yeah.
or anything else. If it's behind your back, find an edge on the wall.
Yeah.
So it's that, innit? It's that in,
Yeah.
and then it slides out.
Yeah, and if you
Lifting up that groove. Something under that to lift that groove,
Yeah.
which takes it off the ratchet, and then it slides.
exactly, not everything is patience and time.
So the other method is friction.
So
Break
what
it.
you could do,
You get this is called plan B. Where did you pull that out?
that's why I went straight up. And then inside this, you've got other tools that you can use. I'm not going to pull it out.
So what we're going to do with this then? We're going to just do the destructive?
Yeah, we'll just do the destructive. If you want to have a go when it's on, before we break it, just try and see if you can do it with your fingernail, or if you can do it with the top end of this. This should be enough for everybody.
I managed two. I've done two at the same time, so one should be fairly simple. So again, same deal, through here,
Yeah,
pull it tight, and it just...
it's exactly the same.
This side, lifting that up. So that's, yeah. And you're looking at getting a flat shim under that. Once you get in there and under that, it's fucking hard without my glasses. Here, you should be able to get underneath to release it. Yeah, that's the idea. Good enough. I don't know what zip ties are going to be most commonly used, but these are the only ones that I've managed to break with this method. So a couple of these, but I don't think anyone's going to bind you with a couple of these. I think it's much more likely going to be at least this thickness, which wouldn't fucking break and jolted my wrist big time, or it's going to be something like this. In which case, if it's something like this, the only other way is non-destructive, which is to shim the pick, the lock, slide. Get something flat under 3 of the grooves, because it works on a tooth and groove system. Get 3 in there so it raises it up, and then you can bring this back out so it could be reused. That's the non-destructive way. The other way is friction. So a lot of the guys on the seal carry a shim, handcuff key or razor blade, and some sort of cordage. If you look at Solomon shoes usually have the pull system laces, are usually like Kevlar type material. So they're ideal. They're really going to get through some types of metal. But if not, you're looking at the corner of a brick wall, and you're looking at consistent friction until you can break it. Another thing that they'll have, you know, the string that you get with jogging bottoms, they'll often tie one of those around inside the seat of their pants that may be missed when they're stripped, which means they've got cordage. And they're not unknown to like lie on their back with this cordage between each toe and literally shimmy somehow like this. They're innovative with the ways in which they do it. It's either going to be friction, something that will burn and cut, or something that will pick it. Do you understand? But we can have one go at this. So if you look at this as a zip tie, these are approximately as difficult as what you just did. So not really that difficult, but like I said, who's going to do you with one of these? Right, it's pretty fucking thin, isn't it? But it's the same thing. That's the idea. I want you to have a little go with what's left of these, and then if you want, if you're brave enough, have a go. Have a go with one of these.
Primary things that relates to combat casualty care, or tactical medicine, if you want to call it that, is a situation where there's been a plane crash, car crash, explosion, somebody's been shot, somebody's been stabbed, you know, somebody's been fucking massacred, major trauma, imagine combat field. So a paramedic in combat casualty care in the military is going to see some very horrific, nasty things, as you can imagine. The primary thing that they need to know is how to control massive hemorrhaging or massive bleeding. So let's look at the knife as an example. There's 4 ways in which a knife will kill you. External bleeding, where you've been hit on an artery which is under pressure and is now bleeding out, under pressure in volume. External bleeding will kill you in a short period of time. Internal bleeding, where you've been stabbed and something is bleeding inside. Pneumothorax, where you've been stabbed somewhere in this square area, either the front, side or back, and your lung is deflated. The final one is cardiac injury, so you get a pinprick-sized wound to the heart will kill you in less than 7 minutes. So these are the primary things. In terms of which one of those can be treated by a paramedic in the street, by somebody with medical knowledge, by yourself to a degree, the only one that can be treated is external bleeding. If you've been stabbed and you're bleeding inside, if you've got a pneumothorax or a cardiac injury, the only person that can help you is a surgeon. And you need to get to a hospital within 10 minutes on the table, lightly, and that's what you need. So, external bleeding to a limb, so brachial artery, femoral artery, external carotid artery, any trauma to these areas will bleed out into volume. We have approximately 5 litres of blood in the body. The critical point is 2.5. If you lose 2.5 litres, you're not coming back. So you need treatment within the minimal blood loss. And the standard way to treat external bleeding on a limb is compression and elevation. Get to the hospital. The old idea of, tourniquets are really bad and they kill the limb is folklore. Tourniquets save lives, and there's no question about it. Now that we are becoming more in vogue with what's happening in the world, more and more people are focused on the kit they carry, we call everyday carry, which is the last thing we're going to look at. And most people that either work in potential hostile areas or travel regularly third world countries, or could find themselves in a situation where there's conflict, will carry some kind of medical kit. And the medical kit can be very, very simple and small, such as something like this, which could be in a bag. And it could even be smaller still, such as something like this. And basically all this has in it is what they call a swatty, which is an improvised bandage as well as a tourniquet. Will stop bleeding. And combat casualty care, fucking Israeli type bandage. Also, one of these, can't fucking remember what it's called, but for piercing a hole in the fucking so you can breathe, and then a neck chest flail, and a tube for airway. These are the basic minimals. So the airway and control of bleeding is primary. The only thing we're going to look at is control of bleeding. The way that you would control bleeding, ideally, would be with a specific tourniquet of that design. And this is a cat, this is the recommended one. The way that you would keep it rather than in the cellophane wrapper that you would have to undo and then unfold is you would keep it what we call staged. So prepped or staged, ready simply to throw over a limb. How you would use it. So literally all I have to do is throw this over a limb as high as possible, pull it tight, do it up, and start to use the windlass to turn it to make it constrict it tight and then seal it off. That's all I would do. It is possible for you to self-tourniquet as well as do it to somebody else. So here's mindset for you, right? SEAL Team 6, who I've worked with about 3 times now in the US, if they're on the field or they infiltrate a building, they have a tourniquet here, tourniquet here, tourniquet here, and tourniquet here. It's loosely staged on their body. So if they get cut, they pull it tight and keep fighting. That's fucking mindset, isn't it? And that's the kind of mindset you want to start with. So we're going to look at how to apply a specific tourniquet, right, for a design. And I suggest you get hold of them because they're relatively cheap and you can save lives massively. The other is this, which is a swatty, which again, just wrap round, pull tight and bind off. Simple enough. If you had nothing, you could improvise very, very easily. Something of material-like structure. So this is just a bandana, but a tablecloth or a napkin could also work. So what I'm doing here is I'm making a loose knot like so, yeah, and then I'm making another loose knot like that I'm going to put my windlass in, which in this case is just a piece of cutlery. This would go around the limb. What I would also clip onto is I would clip this structure on here, like so. Then this would, bear with me, this would go around the limb, be turned until it was so fucking tight it's excruciatingly painful, and it cuts off all the blood flow, and then it would be fixed into the clip like so. Right. Knowing how to do this, and there's plenty of shit online that will show you, you could learn that in 2 minutes. And if you could improvise something to do it very quickly, there's a potential you could save life. Better than that, if you have in your everyday kit or even on your person, it's a tourniquet, again you could save lives. Does that make sense? Right, so we're just going to do a couple of drills that will look at, first of all, how you can apply a tourniquet to yourself and to a partner. Right? We're going to look at a limb. For limbs, tourniquets reign supreme. If the cut is on a junction, however, you cannot tourniquet. So if somebody got stabbed subclavian and they're breathing out here, I can't tourniquet around his neck because I cut off his blood flow. So you'd have to improvise. You'd have to what you call wound pack. So I'm going to show you how to wound pack. So basically when you wound pack, each of these tubes have got a hollow point. If you breathe, blow through, you can feel air. I've also stabbed one, and purposely when I've stabbed, I've ratcheted the blade to aggravate the wound, to replicate. So inside your piece of foam, which you'll have, you'll feel this hole. And all you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of bandage, and you are going to painstakingly pack with your thumb in, until no more will go in. Keep packing until no more will go in. And you can test that it's all sealed off by blowing through. When you get no air, you know your wound packed. This would be what you would be doing here. And then from there you would apply some kind of gauze. If it was an injury to here, you'd have to apply it here and under the armpit. So under the armpit and around the neck. Now when the arm's done, there's compression here, but you're not getting strangled. Does that make sense? How many of us knew that? I mean, he might know it because he's been a paramedic, but fucking most people don't. You might know it because you're a GP, but most people don't, do they? You know, I didn't fucking know. Any of this stuff now, I've got informed about. You know, I mean, this is all academic research from some of the best people out there, but applied to a UC mindset. So now you're going somewhere with it. Right? So what we're going to do is you're going to get in a group of 4. You're going to take one of these tourniquets which is staged up for you, right? So basically, this is the windlass part. This is the bit that turns. This clip structure here is what, once you've turned it, it fastens into. Right? You can crank it up, or you can ease it off. Obviously, if something is still trickling out blood, it's not tight enough. Turn it right off until there's no more blood. Turn off the tap. So staged up would be like this. So you could immediately throw it high as you can on a limb. So if the cut is anywhere down here, I want it as high as possible, above the cut. Does that make sense? Same on the thigh, it's here, or it's round the femoral. Femoral example. Here, when it's up here, high on the thigh, pull it, crank it tight. Here I'm going to turn this windlass, here, so it's extremely fucking uncomfortable, then I'm going to box it off. That's how simple it is. Right? I want you to be able to do that to yourself. And then I want you to be able to do that to your partner in the group. Because the way I want to finish this is with the idea of run, fight, run. So I want to give you a brief simulation. So the simulation is going to incorporate you running up, down, which would replicate running to safety. Then you meet somebody who you have to deal with. Now you have to fight. You will blitzkrieg through this one. Then you will run again and run back. Run one more time, run back. Now you will get to a place of safety and self-medical triage. Check yourself. In this particular case, you've got an arterial injury. You need to apply a tourniquet yourself really quickly, and then you need to fight another pad man. Do you understand? So you need to run, fight, self-medical triage, apply a tourniquet, fight, run. That's the way it's going to be. That's the dynamic. And that's how you should train for this shit. All up for that? Right. First of all then, I want you to get with a partner. Let's get organised. Going to get in a group of 4. You're going to take 2 of these and 1 of these. Down, pull it tight, crank it. Understand? If he's in pain, he's going to be screaming. There's a documented case where a woman was awarded for her bravery and her courage, where she saved a police officer. He'd been stabbed in the femoral. She had no tourniquet. She plugged in with her coat, plugged the wound and stood on it. Both feet bounced through her weight while he was screaming. Stopped him bleeding out. As soon as you tied it off, take the windlass and tie it. Then put it in. You notice that is that quick, right? Release it, and then your partner does it to you. Got it? Back on. Tubing will replicate a limb. So I don't know if you can see that, but basically that's a big piece of this with a makeshift bone in it, with a piece of surgical tubing like so, which replicates the artery, right? The stab wound is there, and you can see how the wound is being packed with the bandage. It plugs and compresses the artery, which then cuts off the bleeding. From there is where you would apply the Israeli tight bandage, around and around and around and really tight. Now you're set. You know, you're plugged up until you can get to a hospital. You will live. Is it useful to know that? Fuck yes, it's useful to know that. So right, learn it. So right, couldn't get fucking tubing through this, so I didn't bother. So, but you've got a hole there that you can blow through. Right, so when you take the piece and you blow through it, first thing you feel. Then look for the stab wound. Your whole thumb will fit in it. Take your bandage, in which case it's just these cheap shitty little bandages, but they'll do. And you're going to feed it in continuously with both thumbs. You can get them both working until it won't go in anymore. Once it doesn't go in anymore, you should be wound packed. Just to make sure you're wound packed, blow through the hole. If there's no air, that's when you would apply the bandage layers. Does that make sense? Right, or whatever you've got to improvise in the moment. Hopefully you have a medical kit after today. But I just want you to get this going. It's tips of thumbs, tips of thumbs. You can feed it in real quick. It's a bit fine motor, but you'll get it quickly, yes? Can we all try this in your group? Change the position so it's on your shoulder. All you're going to do is cut an angle like this. Just going to make a diagonal line, and you can hit in the skull, side of the jaw, side of the neck. Right? From here, we're going to be literally this. You've got a hand on your body.
just going to vertically come down, vertically in a line, circle it back, boom, like this. Same as if you were cycling. Then finally you put it all together. Understand the drill? If I give you partner, massively intimidating, which is the idea of something getting that kind of back, it's an intimidating tool. It depends how you think about it. If you think, oh, fucking hell, it's got bad, I can break my head, well then you've already lost it, really. Whereas if I think, unless he's trained, there's a good chance he's going to emotionally fixate on that weapon. Which means his only thing that he can do is hit me with that. It's the only thing he's got. Whereas I've got everything, I've got all my tools. If I was to drop that weapon, I would immediately go to unarmed skills in order to deal with the threat. Then once he's down, I'll pick the weapon up again. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's important that you learn how to transition. But you can also do it in bond. So as an example here, I'm going to go over and back. And when I've gone over and back, you're going to give me a low feed for a knee. Alright? So I'm going to go without clinching, putting a knee, dragging it down, and then you do the pads again. And I'm going to go 1, 2, finish it. It'll be one example. So what you're doing is you're going up a space, over, back, pinch hold of him, putting the knee break his face, snatching down, and then you go 1, 2, 3 to make sure. Yeah? A bit of overkill. Try that. Get in a pair now with your partner. First count coming up. 1, 2, 3. Good. Again. 1, 2, 3. Good job. One more with a count. Stand by. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. Last time. 1, 2, 3. Right, so if you use any of these tools here, they are for you. Right, so if I hit him in the head and he starts to cover his head, which he should, I should safely be able to hit the helmet and his arm structure. Understand? You won't be better now. By the side of the replicate broken ball, I'm just going to stick him in where I can. And he's just going to replicate the response to that. If I've got this one, I'll just keep waiting. Using a soft crush-like structure, same thing, I'm just going to hit. Using a knife, understand? I need to tell you out. You're going to pick a weapon. Right, so, pick your weapon. Let's attack you. Your whistle. First whistle, he is going to attack him, call for God, whatever it is they do. See the situation, you're going to run in, take him out, get him clear. As soon as he's down, get gone. Understand? Yep. First whistle you attack, second whistle you go. That's it. That's all you're going to do. Alright? Now, one more. This time, you're going to turn the use of type of resistance. Right? It's now necessary for both of you to attack and both of you to react. So focus on that. overwhelming. Down, getting clear. Good. Right, you see how that could work? Right, see where that belongs? Whether or not that's going to happen in a situation like that depends on your mentality. So, if you are caught in an active threat situation by yourself, and you're not really a people person, and none of these people here are relevant to you, then be honest. Are you going to help anyone, or are you going to say, fuck it, I'm going home? You're probably going to focus on self-preservation. If you're the kind of person that says, oh no, I like to be a hero, well, you're probably not going to know until you find yourself there. But I know lots of people, funny enough, that couldn't bear to stand and see that. They have to help. So if you're that kind of person, all power to you. But if you are with somebody who is significant to you, and it's them being assaulted, well, if you're worth your salt, you need to do something. Does that make sense? So that's the idea. Somebody you know, somebody you feel that you need to help, you're in a two-man team. One person is going to attack, you're going to run in, deal with him, evac the other guy. Simple job. Everyone want to have a go or not? Yeah. Yes? Right. We've got 4 people. Good job. First whistle tap. Second whistle, intervene. Stand by. This time, the threat, the threat is going to be active, which means it's going to see you coming, which means it's going to turn the fight up. So now it might be a good idea for both to attack, and then both evac. Understand? So make sure you're armed. First whistle attack.
Good girl, keep going. Evac, evac, evac.
Ready? Take! Sprint! Up!
Come on, Hodge. Come.
Good. Back. Go!
Left side.
Turn up!
quickly. You're bleeding out. You're bleeding out.
Fight! Run! Back! Back this way, quickly! Check yourself, tourniquet, quickly, put it on. Got arterial cut to the arm. Put it on quickly, tighten it. Go, fight! Run! Good job. Stand by. Run up, run back, run up, fight. Run back, run up, run back, check yourself, tourniquet. Fight, exit. Clear? Clear. Run! Fight! Run! Back! Run! Check your body, tourniquet, quickly! Do it quick, you're cut, you're bleeding out. Put it on. Tighten it up, access your knife. 2, 1, fight! Run! Yes, good job. Last part relates to what's known in this game now as EDC. It means everyday carry. Problem with anything like that, it attracts serious geek squad. Really, really does. So you've got a lot of, like I said, 40-year-old virgins living with their mum, collect all the stuff and have all the gear but no idea, basically. So we're trying to stay away from that. Although on my website now and on my Facebook page I like to talk about gear, talk about the latest this, latest that, it does attract the geek squad. So I shut it down straight away, But basically, everyday carry means what you have on your person. That's personal effects. For the majority of people, that's usually a phone, because everybody lives their life via the phone, maybe a wallet and the keys. That's probably it. But you really need to look at stuff that could, possibly get you out of a jam. So as a very minimum, you should have communications, a phone. You should have something like, you should have money. So either money on your card or nomination coins you can make a phone call with, or cash of the currency that you're in. So in an emergency you could get a taxi, get a transport, get out of Dodge. So money and comms, that would be a basic, wouldn't it? You might add in addition to that is something that you could use as an improvised tool. Maybe an improvised weapon. So if you lived in the US, the average combative trainee would have a concealed carry permit for a Glock, would have a secondary tool such as a folding blade, would have a tactical flashlight, would have communications, would have a wallet, secondary wallet, and various other items. So there's 3 tiers to EDC. The first is personal carry, and that basically relates to what you got on you in your pockets. So I will have communications, a phone, I'll have my keys, I'll have a wallet with some cash in it, and a wallet with ID separate maybe. I'll also have probably at least 2, maybe 3 improvised weapons on me, because that's just how I roll. Right? Staying within the realms of legality, anything that I have on me will be UK legal, or will be of a design that is not weapon by design, and it's not been manufactured in any way to be used as a weapon. But it has weapon attributes. So a flashlight's for illumination, it's also a handheld impact tool. A pen is for writing, but it's also a skull spike, because I'll stick it through your fucking head. A beanie hat keeps me warm. A lock locks up my locker at the gym. Do you know what I mean? But the 2 combined give me a kosh. Get the idea? So personal carry would really got what you got on your person. What I'll have on me in my person when I travel will extend to some kind of bag. So I'll have more items, but usually only when I travel. So tier 1 would be personal carry kit. Tier 2, for me, would be what you carry in your vehicle. So in your vehicle, you should carry lots of shit. I carry lots of shit. It's very basic. You should have good medical kit. You should possibly have water, extra fuel, food, snacks, clothing, maybe. But I would definitely have probably 2 bags. One would be what you call urban kit, so more for a city environment. The other would be rural kit, more for a wooded area or a more remote area. And they will both contain various items. So in the urban kit, I'll have a good medical kit. It's got a tourniquet, some bandages, the means to deal with create a clear airway, etc., etc. Got the old classic beanie hat and a fucking padlock. Always keep the key, so now you've got a reason to have the padlock. Right, I've got a decent watch, a belt that doubles as a cosh and also a restraint. I've got extra batteries for a flashlight. I've got a pen here, a good sturdy structure. I've got my latest reading material, which is Camper Custody. I've got some food snacks. I've got a pen, paper. What have I got in here? I've got the means to create fire. I've got a UK legal cutting tool. I've got an extra flashlight. I've got a fucking beacon in case I get lost. I've got a whistle in case I get lost. You get the idea, right? You can be as anal about it as you want. But if you've got a bag, then why wouldn't you, be quite anal about it? So you've got loads of kit in there. In here, I've got this tool structure, which gives me a variety of kits. Here I've got 2 wood whittling tools. Both are skull spikes. I've got a massage stick that also doubles. I've got a wood wedge, which would allow me to wedge or secure a door. I've got a multi-tool and I've got a spare flashlight. Because I've got something that could be construed as a weapon, I've got something that gives me a reason for carrying it. So this is the wood chisel, and this is what I whittle on. Understand? Get the idea? If I was living in a country where it was legal for me to carry a blade, a axe, a gun, fuck me, I would. But we're not. So what you have here has to be considered UK legal. So you have to get these considerations. But basically, I've got a kit that will allow me to deal with most emergencies in a city urban environment. Yes? Yeah. Then I've got, in my car, a kit that will allow me to deal with a rural environment. Right? So first of all, I've got water purifier. The very basics that you should have are what you call the 5 C's. So the 5 C's are, in terms of in survival terms, are something that you could cover yourself with. Coverage, right? So a tight cordage. Cordage that will allow me to tie that to certain structures. Container that will allow me to gather water. A cutting tool that will allow me to do a variety of things. And combustion, the means to create fire. So I've got a lighter, I've got matches, and if they fail, I've got a fire starter. Another useful piece of little piece of kit you can keep with you is Vaseline, because Vaseline feeds the fire. Also candles, etc. here. If you wanted to take it further, is maybe you travel to places where there was the potential for trouble. You might carry a small tin with some escape tools. So the recommendation is that you have a razor blade, a universal handcuff key, and maybe something you could use as a shim, such as the hairpin that we talked about before. These wouldn't be kept in this little box. If I was in an environment such as that, they would be on my person, in my personal carry. And they would be on a waistband area where I could access them from the front if I was restrained, and also from the rear. Do you get the idea about everyday kit? So, like I say, you can see where the scope is to be extremely fucking anal here, can you? Right? I've just gone borderline, but I know I'm approaching Geek Squad. So I'm not telling you to go to this extent, but I am telling you that in your car, it would be useful if you had a go bag, where if you had to leave the city in an emergency, where you could survive for at least 72 hours, using the stuff that I've said here. Personal carry that you could use for communications as improvised weapons. Think about your clothing, the shoes you wear. Could you run in them? Could you fight in them? Would they give you any kind of protection? Any kind of clothing that you wear, would it protect you from the elements if you were caught out, etc., etc.? Do you get the point? So a tier 1 civilian trainee would be a civilian person, no connection to the military or security, doesn't work in an operational sense, but has the keen interest to do everything he can for his own or her own self-preservation. In which case they've learned very good unarmed skills. They know how to use a blade, they know how to use an impact weapon. Where relevant, you may learn to shoot and use a firearm. You should know how to drive well. Can you drive offensively to create a barrier and to get out if you've been boxed in? Could you drive defensively to lose a tail or surveillance? Do you know anything about medical care that could stop bleeding, as we looked at? Could you formulate any skill that would allow you to escape restraint? Do you know anything about bushcraft? Could you survive the night? Could you find water, etc., etc.? All of these skills create what you call a tier 1 civilian. So there's a stigma attached to that, like Jason Bourne, John Wick. Fuck yes, I want to be Jason Bourne. Absolutely. I want you all to be Jason Bourne. So I'm going to give you that kind of skill set that will make you much more capable than you are now. Most people that train in combatives just do the unarmed shit, which is fine. But, I think you need more, particularly as the environment is evolving. Does that make sense? Right. So what I suggest is that you get researched. I mean, if you look on the internet, it's a double-edged sword, the internet, but it is a good resource. Look at some of the things we looked at. If you send me an email, I'll send you this online, the handout that I've done, because it will cover or reiterate all the points that I spoke about that you've probably already forgotten. Yeah, so please email me and I'll send you it, colour PDF, or to your phone. Anyone got any questions? No? Right, all that remains is I want to put your hands together, if you would, for all my lads that come down to help me. For sharing his knowledge. Big thanks to all of you for turning up on your Sunday. I appreciate that. Like I said, this workshop marks the 20th year of UC, and it's going from strength to strength. We've taught in over 40 countries. We've got study groups and group schools in about 36 different places around the world. We've got a Far East connection, Australia, US, Canada, and all over Europe. So it's really thriving. Just opened the headquarters in Frankfurt a few days ago. So UC's doing really well. It's the fruits of my hard work have come out, and I appreciate everyone that's took part in that. This is going to be the last thing from me for at least 3 months. I need to take some time out, some surgery that I've got to deal with, and there'll be a recovery period. But you see, the classes will continue, hopefully the workshops will continue, and the European circuit is still strong. All right? So we could just get a group picture. That would be really nice.